Look, you guys, we are in the greenhouse. It's not done, but I'm in it. You would not believe how warm it is in here. And yeah, the sun is already behind some trees, but it is so toasty in here. I know this is going to be a fantastic space this winter to do videos in. I'm even thinking of putting a mini kitchen in here and do some cooking videos. The light's perfect. I know, I'm dreaming, right? Yeah, today, garden friends, we are going to talk about garden lies we tell ourselves. So I think there's 11 points here that I wanted to share with you. Now, I didn't come up with this title myself. There was a local Rose Society show, and they were having a speaker. And that was the title of her presentation. So I will totally confess, I stole this title. But also then I had a visitor or a viewer who said something similar, that she had gone to some kind of local garden club and they had the same discussion and it was the same title. So I thought it was good to share with you. So let's get going on these 11 lies we gardeners can tell ourselves. And maybe we shouldn't. Well, you must admit that we gardeners are probably our own worst critics. And we often get some weeds in our thinking that we need to just get rid of. So lie number one that we tell ourselves is, I don't have a green thumb. None of us are born with a green thumb. Gardening is a skill that is learned by trial and error, by doing, by researching, and what suits one garden doesn't always suit another. So if you follow certain garden advice and you find that it didn't work for you, it doesn't mean you didn't have a green thumb. It means that doesn't work in your area, your conditions. I have many videos on different ways I do things that are quite different from the normal advice. And that's from decades of trial and error in different areas and in my what I consider very challenging conditions here in the mountains. We deal with a short growing season, heavy wet snows, late spring freezes after a warm spell. There's so many different things, and you just learn to work with it, and you learn what will work for you, what won't, and it's not always the same as someone else in their garden. So just go ahead, plow in, and just enjoy. So gardening lie number two. Gardening is easy. Well, gardening is relaxing, gardening is rewarding, and gardening can be challenging. But it's work, and it's something that is enjoyable, but it still takes effort on your part. But it doesn't have to be hard work, meaning once you learn the rhythm of your garden, your space, your conditions, then you will find what works and for you well, and what plants will perform for you easily, and where someone else, they might find those plants a challenge because of their local conditions. So yeah, don't be fooled by how easy some people may make it seem without showing you all the hard work that is behind anything that gets put in. They may have help with certain tasks that you don't. Therefore, yeah, play to your strengths and play to the strengths of your garden in your area. And then it won't seem like work, even though it's work. I had a lot of people that come to my garden and they say, wow, this must be a lot of work. And I think about it for a minute. There is effort involved, but since I enjoy it and it's my relaxation, it's how I get away from the stresses of this world, then it doesn't feel like work. It just is enjoyable. And when I let go of perfection, that's when it became much easier, because I didn't worry about weeds infringing upon an area and all of that. So that took a lot of the stress out of it. So then it did seem easy, even though it was work. Where am I at? Lie number three. Companion planting will eliminate pests. I just watched a video, and and the presenter had said, if you plant herbs around your containers or raised beds, you will not have pests. And that is not accurate. You will always have pest pressure. Some years you'll have different pests than others. It is just the nature of things. Some years, like last year, I had the worst attack of spider mites on some of my strongest plants, and I didn't recognize it until they were near dead or dead. And then I finally realized it was spider mites, and it totally took me by surprise. Now I know what spider mites look like. I know what the damage looks like. Why it took me so long to figure out that the infestation was beyond the plant's ability to fight off, who knows? Probably just busy. But yeah, and this year I had hardly any. Spider mites, and so it's cyclic. Sorry, I heard something behind me. So no, just know that for me, organic gardening has helped me to contain bad pests because I make it like an insectary. Is that what it's called? Where I invite all these good pests, not pests, I shouldn't call them pests if they're good, right? Good insects, and they combat or eat or prey upon the bad insects that may cause damage to the plants. And therefore, the pest pressure is less. But planting herbs is not going to be the single thing you do. There are certain plants that repel pests. I had to move. It was very distracting over there. Some plants do act as a trap crop, meaning they will attract the pests away from your plants that they would harm, whereas they will not harm the trap plant. Will be able to resist the attack of those pests. For some reason, it doesn't succumb to the damage that they do. And those things help, but they don't eliminate. So be judicious. Now, if you, like me, are always using organic methods and you're building the health of your garden, the health of your plants, a lot to do with plants attracting pests has to do with the Brix level in their leaves, and that is affected by what you feed them and other things like your soil health. So a lot of factors are mitigated if you use organic methods and you stay away from synthetics, like anything like a fertilizer that's pink or blue, that's synthetic, and it could upset the levels, the Brix levels, like the sugar levels of what's in the plant, the sap of the plant, the flowers, and that insects, pests from way above can fly over and they can see whether or not they'll be able to digest that plant if it's a good fit for them to eat. Now, if the Brix levels are correct or optimum, they'll pass by those plants because they can't digest what they're trying to suck out of it. So I've really tried to focus in or hone in on soil health and using organic methods for everything. And let me tell you, I have very little pest problems in my garden. Lie number 4, I will remember what I planted here. I'll remember what seeds I started. I'll remember what's in this pot. So yeah, that is a big fat fib. Do not ever believe yourself. I've done it numerous times. And yeah, you will be kicking yourself later down the line when you're like, okay, what did I plant here? Also, it's beneficial because sometimes in spring you want to add another perennial. You found a new one and you're not exactly sure where in your garden the perennials that have not come back for that season yet, and you won't know for sure where to plant it. I was just watching, I think I was over at Creekside Garden, and she was showing 2 plants that were like right on top of each other, and that's what had occurred. She had found a new perennial, had plopped it in, thought she was far enough away from the other perennial, and yeah, come to find out they were right next to each other and they were crowding each other. So always mark where you have things. Some kind of marker, you can make your own. I've showed you with like sour cream tubs or whatever to cut the little white markers, especially when you're seed starting, if you do not recognize what seedlings look like for particular flowers. Now, walking through my garden, sorry, the mosquitoes are out here. I have a bunch of larkspur that are coming up that seeded themselves back in July when the plants, went to seed and dumped them. and I know what they look like. So I thought, okay, there's a patch of larkspur. Don't want them there. I'll scoop them up with a shovel and I'll plant them somewhere else. Now, larkspur don't like to be transplanted, but when they're only this big and the roots are not very deep, I can get underneath where the root is and it won't even know that it's been moved. And then I can move it to another area, especially if it's cool like it's been now. It's very mild. So, yeah, number 4, don't forget to mark your plants or where you've planted them. Also, another thing I do is, like when I planted my irises, I did a map. I drew the bed shape or the flower bed, and then I marked, circles. Each one was an iris, and then I put the name of the iris on that circle so I could pull out that map and look at it, and then I would know the names of the iris. Now that has been, what I would say, messed up because the gophers got in there and they chewed up a bunch of the plant, and they even moved some of my rhizomes, and yeah, so I don't know for sure until next year's bloom, and then I can go by and mark them or make a new map. But I did try. I'm just loving standing by these sweet peas. Lie number 5. This will only take a few minutes. You go out to do something. Maybe it's to pick a few tomatoes or a few peppers or something, or some lettuce to bring in from the garden. And you notice, oh no, that pot's drying out. You go to water it. Then you notice something else. You go to fix that. And pretty soon, you are out there for an hour. You might have even left something cooking on the stove. Ask me how I know. Anyway, so yeah, don't ever think that it will only take you a few minutes. For me, when I go out to the garden, it does help me to set a timer, like 10 minutes or whatever on my phone, and then it will go off and remind me that really I was in the middle of something else and I need to get back to it. So there's a little helpful hint. Set a timer on your phone whenever you think you're going to go out to the garden for just a few minutes. Another lie that many wannabe gardeners tell themselves is, I don't have enough space. Well, it doesn't take a whole lot of space to enjoy some plants, some flowers, even some vegetables in containers. I have a friend who is older. She lives in a small retirement community. She has a very tiny apartment and a very tidy space around her front entrance. And she has planted up many containers and other things. She's got vegetables, she's got beautiful flowers, and she switches it out seasonally, so it's always changing and she's always enjoying something new. And she does things from seed. She even had a little grow light that she started things on her kitchen table, and just for the fun. And I didn't think that little grow light would be worth beans, but she did it successfully and she has the plants to prove it. So never discount even the tiniest space that you can garden in. It's not the size of the garden, it's the love you put into it and the enjoyment you get out of it. I think I'm on point number 7. Real gardens don't have weeds. My friend was talking to me the other day about a video she watched, and the gal said, if you put in raised beds, you will never have to pull a weed again. And I just looked at her like, are you nuts? You will always have weeds to pull. That is part of gardening. A weed is just a plant that is in the wrong spot. You will have birds flying in, no matter raised beds or containers, fresh potting soil or not. Weeds will get in. Weed seeds will blow on the wind. The birds will drop them. There's always some way that they manage to appear, and yet they're not usually hard to pull out. Yes, it is very easy, especially in containers and in raised beds, to spot a weed because they're contained spaces and small spaces. But super easy to pull out. But no, you're always going to have weeds. So don't believe that garden lie. Garden fib number 8. I don't have fancy tools, so I can't garden. You know, when I first started gardening, I had hand-me-down tools. I had a hoe, a shovel, a trowel, and that was about it. Sprinklers, I guess that's not a tool, but it could be one. You can get started with little or nothing. You could even I have used a butcher knife in my garden for doing different things, a paring knife, serving spoons, big metal serving spoons I used to dig. I'm pretty much adept at grabbing anything and everything to try and garden with. And so you can do it no matter what you have. Now, you can find some tools at dollar stores. I wouldn't say they will last you a long time. So a garden friend over at Garden Happy, she did a video on certain garden tools that she found were valuable or useful from Dollar Tree, and others that weren't worth the dollar to pay for them. But you can find really good garden tools. A brand that I have used is Fiskars. I'm trying to remember Fiskars, like their pruners, the trowels, and other things that have lasted well. Now, I have traded up to some fancier, more expensive pruners that stay sharp longer, but the Fiskars worked great. I just had to sharpen them more often. So you don't have to pay a lot of money for good garden tools that will get you through a garden season. And yeah, I often link to the tools I use. Some of them may be pricier, like the shovel. There's one called Root Slayer, and that is really great for digging up and dividing and transplanting some deeper, heavier rooted things, because the sides will slice through those big roots that you need to have released to get that plant out. So those are not absolutely necessary, but they are helpful. So a regular garden shovel will work fine. I have some that are very old. I love the wooden handles. I do have to wax and oil the handles. The newer ones have the fiberglass handles. I really like the look of the wood, but that's just me, liking vintage things. But no, you do not have to have fancy tools to garden well. So I would say number 9 is something I've repeated often. And that is the lie of your garden has to look perfect to be enjoyed. No, that is not accurate. Gardening in itself is a process, a journey. Enjoy the journey. Even when your garden is as imperfect as mine, whenever anyone comes over, they recognize the beauty and not the weeds, and not that it's not perfectly edged. And like up here with, I don't see, can you see my rose alley? I have driftwood, I have rocks, I have other things lining the edges. It's not a perfect edge. And then the micro clover I have growing in place of grass, because I love a green path, but we're in California, drought-ridden California, so it never rains in summer. So a regular grass path is not water-wise. But this path, the micro clover, does beautifully even without getting water during the summer. Now, this is looking even lusher right now because we have gotten a few rains, but it still looks nice and green, if not as lush, in the summer when it's getting almost no water. And sometimes some of the little sprayers I have in the flower beds will spray over, and that's why the edges will be a little bit longer than the center where I walk. But yeah, far from perfect, but I love it. Another garden lie that we may tell ourselves is, I'll never catch up. Now, there are times when life takes over. Like next week for me, it is slam-packed. And yeah, I won't be able to get out here. There are so many things I need to get done and prepared for winter. I shouldn't say need, I should. And I could get caught in that mental trap of thinking, oh no, I'm going to be so far behind, I'll never catch up. You know what? I'm doing a video, if I haven't already posted it, of things I do and do not do, or maybe things I'll skip in the fall that others would have you do for preparation for spring. So it's not something that's absolutely must be done. If you don't get it done now, you can just catch up in the spring. But one thing about the garden is you are never done. It is constantly changing. You'll have unexpected pests move in. You'll have a disease that suddenly shows up you've never seen before. You will face things that need taken care of. And you will think that that area was done. Not so. Just enjoy the process. Always just go to your garden to get away and not to burden yourself with tasks that maybe you think need to be done, but really you could pass on this time around. Let go of the pressure. Enjoy the peace. Number 11, it's too late to start. It is never, you are never too old I just had some viewers, I'm sorry to skip over, and I thought, viewers who, one gal said she was in her late 70s when she got her first garden, started her first garden, and now she's well into her 80s and she's still loving it. She's mindful of her limitations, but she does what she can do and loves every minute of it. And so many comments when I did, it was my video on gardening over 50, reminders and tips and tricks, whatever. And yeah, I had a lot of people thank me for that one and also comment on how old they were and how they've adjusted so that they can keep on gardening. So even if it's a small containers or maybe you just have houseplants, African violets, even when my grandmother was getting to the point where she was not very mobile, she couldn't really get outside to her precious garden, she loved her African violets. They were on her kitchen windowsill, they were on a side table in the living room, and she just enjoyed pampering and working with those African violets. They brought her such joy, and that's gardening too. So never think it is too late to start. Also, you could be thinking it's too late in the season, like this is late fall or mid-fall, whatever you want to call it. And you might think, well, I can't start now. You start in spring. That's not true. You really can do a lot in fall. I have a blog post and I think a video on seeds you can start in fall. Direct sow them in the ground. In fact, I'm going to do some more here tomorrow. I'm going to go and direct sow a lot of seeds that are like cool flowers, they're called. They love the cool of winter to get going and will do just fine here in my zone and across many zones. So I will probably video that. We'll see on if I get in a hurry to get it done. Sometimes I'll do things and I don't have time to video it, so sorry about that. But yeah, so if it was winter, you could sit out and plan a garden. Look at gardens on Pinterest or watch YouTube videos. Never compare your garden to others, but get inspiration. Look at things that, or even at garden centers, if they have them. I know somewhere in cool areas, when I do a video, like whenever I'm over at Lowe's, I'll do a garden tour video of their garden section. I love doing that because many people will say, our Lowe's doesn't have that. Well, I know my Lowe's doesn't have what some on the East Coast have, and I really am envious of the selections that they have, but it is what it is. And so, yeah, no matter what time of year, you can start preparing for gardening. You could also, like this time of year in fall, you could be putting out compost or gathering leaves from neighbors and dumping them in a flower bed to a future flower bed to mulch it. It will help with weeds, but it also will treat the soil so that by the time spring rolls around, that soil is going to be friable and it's going to be filled with worms, and you should be able to love it. But you never know what will turn up. The only reason I said that was my cousin had this raised bed, and one year it was filled with these thick grubs, and it was, when she looked it up, it was like June bugs, grubs, and she didn't know where she got them or where they came in from. And a neighbor of hers had the same problem, so it must have been locally. Yeah. But anyways, that's what I said about the surprise. Sorry, that was kind of an addendum. Yeah, right. I think that was it. So here is my final thoughts. Now, sometimes we tell ourselves these garden lies out of fear, frustration, who knows what. But gardening is a learned skill, just like any other skill, and trial and error, experimentation, those are all great teachers. I have loved, like here, I'm in California, the Western Gardening book. I've loved that from Sunset. I've read that over the years. I first got mine back in the 80s, and it was so helpful for different plants. I could look it up. That was before the internet, so you couldn't really look things up on the internet. Yeah, local garden clubs. I learned so much from them. Visiting flower farms, and I mean flower farms like I've been to Shriner's Iris Gardens. I've been to Superstition Iris Gardens. I've been to Horton's Iris Gardens. So everywhere I pick up a little bit more knowledge about, and they may have different growing techniques, and I've picked and pulled from all of them, and they may sometimes go contrary to each other. So you find what fits for you by that trial and error. You can get the basics from reading. You have to be very, very careful because as Alexandra over at Middle Sized Garden, it's been a while back, but I'm quoting her. She said there's a whole lot of gardening nonsense out there that people keep repeating. And it's common, would you say, sayings or whatever, or even common advice in the gardening world. I'm doing a video on things I cut back in fall that most people tell you not to. And I tell you why I do it. And I have found through trial and error that that's what works best in my garden. So you can't always go by what all the experts say. You have to find out what works for you. And sometimes that might mean killing a few plants accidentally. And because you'll do it their way and you find out it didn't work for your garden. So all of that being said, I hope you enjoyed these, I guess it's 11 gardening lies that we tell ourselves that really you don't have to take to heart. So I'll see you in my next video. Bye. So the porch is going on. It's gonna have, the floor is gonna go on there in a minute. Not in a minute, but by tomorrow. And then the porch roof. We're almost there. Do you need to find or get the hinges that are wax filled, and they will lift those upper panels for ventilation. And there's some in the back on the back wall. So it'll pull air in and let it go out the top. It's very hot in there right now.